What if I told you that every night, when you close your eyes and slip into sleep, you aren't turning off at all? You're tuning in. You've been told for your entire life that sleep is a shutdown, a biological necessity, a sort of nightly power outage for your mind and body to recharge. You've heard the phrases over and over: get some rest, switch off, sleep it off, as if your consciousness simply vanishes, your awareness evaporates, and what's left is just an idle body processing fatigue. But let's pause for a moment and really ask, does that version of sleep explain the strange things you felt in the dark? The vivid dreams? The emotions that linger? The visions that felt more real than your waking life? No, it doesn't. Because here's the truth, one that science has danced around but never fully admitted: sleep is not a shutdown. It's not unconsciousness. It's a shift, a portal, a recalibration of awareness. And every night, without even realizing it, you are stepping through a sacred threshold, crossing out of the logic-bound matrix of the waking world into something far older, far deeper, and far more mysterious than we've been led to believe. You see, the modern understanding of sleep is deeply mechanical. It frames the human experience as a machine that needs downtime to restore itself. Under this view, the brain is merely sorting and filing memories like a hard drive. The body is repairing cells like a factory doing nightly maintenance. But this narrative leaves something out, something vital, something you already sense even if you don't have words for it. Because in truth, your experience of sleep has never been mechanical, it's been mystical. Think about it. How is it that you can be completely still, eyes closed, limbs heavy, breath soft, and yet travel, feel, remember things you never learned, see places you've never visited, meet beings you've never met in waking life? Why do you sometimes awaken with answers to questions you never asked? Why do certain dreams shake you to your core, lingering like ghostly fingerprints on your soul, while others vanish like mist? This isn't random. This isn't just your brain doing its thing. This is consciousness in motion, consciousness unbound. Sleep, in its most primal and unfiltered form, is not a descent into nothingness, it's a return to the infinite. In waking life, you're tethered to the senses, locked into time, space, identity. But when you sleep, the strings loosen, the ego softens, the noise quiets. And what emerges is something far more ancient than thought, the awareness that was there before the world told you who you were. But most people miss it, because they've been taught to overlook it. From childhood, you're told that night means rest, that dreams are nonsense, that the strange things you see and feel in the dark are just your imagination. But your imagination is not a lie. It is a language of consciousness, memory, vibration, and truth. The lie of unconscious sleep is one of the greatest misconceptions of our time. Because it does more than just distort your understanding of rest, it severs your connection to the deeper intelligence within you. It trains you to ignore your intuition, to dismiss your dreams, to forget that you are more than just a physical being cycling through routine. You are a traveler, and sleep is your nightly departure. And here's where it gets even more mysterious. What if the moments just before sleep, the in-between space where your body begins to surrender, where thoughts blur and symbols emerge, what if that is your true nature? Not the roles you play during the day, not the mental noise or daily tasks, but that silent observer, slipping across dimensions with no effort and no fear, the part of you that doesn't need language to understand or proof to believe. So why does no one talk about this? Why do our schools, our doctors, and even our spiritual traditions rarely explore sleep as a sacred state of consciousness? It's almost as if we've been conditioned to ignore the doorway that's right in front of us, the one we walk through every night without looking down. But deep within you, there's a knowing, a subtle awareness that something real is happening when you sleep. Not random, not mechanical, not unconscious, something meaningful. You felt it when you woke up breathless from a dream that felt like a message. You felt it when you sensed something was guiding you in the night. You felt it when you knew something in your heart before your mind could catch up. Those moments were not flukes, they were fragments, clues, echoes from the dimension you enter each night when your waking self steps aside. The mind loves to label things it doesn't understand. so it calls it deep sleep or REM cycles and moves on. But the soul remembers. The soul speaks in dreams, in symbols, in silence. And when you close your eyes each night, you are not vanishing. You are reuniting with yourself, with the source, with a truth too big for daylight. So the next time you lie down and drift towards sleep, ask yourself, what if this isn't an ending? What if it's a return? A slipping back into something vast and ancient that the daylight makes you forget? What if sleep isn't unconsciousness at all, but the most conscious part of you finally awakening? And if that's true, then everything changes. Have you ever noticed that peculiar moment right before you fall asleep? That sliver of time when your body begins to relax, your breathing deepens, and your thoughts stop making sense. One moment you're still here, in your room, aware of your surroundings, and the next, you're not quite sure where you are. Images start flashing behind your closed eyes, some familiar, some foreign. A voice whispers something, but you don't know whose voice it is. You might feel like you're floating, weightless, or like you're sinking into the bed while simultaneously lifting out of it. You're not dreaming yet. You're not awake either. You're hovering at the edge of awareness, and this is the gateway no one talks about. This fragile state has a name, though most people have never heard it. It's called the hypnagogic state, a word that sounds almost as mysterious as the experience itself. It is the in-between, the veil, the space where waking consciousness begins to dissolve, but has not yet disappeared. It's the transition point, the spiritual threshold you cross every night, mostly unnoticed. And yet, this fleeting moment is one of the most potent and sacred doorways available to you. During this state, your senses begin to blur. You're still hearing sounds from the outer world, like a car passing outside or the hum of the refrigerator, but they start to fade into the background. Your mind begins to produce flashes of light, fleeting visions, half-formed faces, and nonsensical sentences. It can feel like you're watching a slideshow of symbols that don't quite belong together, and yet they all feel strangely significant. You might see a doorway you've never walked through, or hear a name you don't recognize, but that feels ancient and familiar. These aren't hallucinations, they're transmissions. This is your mind beginning to untether from the linear world. Ancient cultures knew this space well. They didn't rush through it like we do now, falling into sleep, distracted and overstimulated. They revered it. In the mystery schools of Egypt, the edge of sleep was seen as a sacred chamber, a place where the soul slips out of the physical sheath and enters the temple of inner vision. In the Vedic traditions, this state is linked to the borderland of Turiya, pure consciousness, awareness beyond thought. And in many indigenous cultures, this threshold is where shamans receive their visions, entering trance states deliberately by lingering at the edge, rather than plunging into sleep too quickly. What we've forgotten in modern life is that this state isn't just a transition, it's a space of its own, a dimension, a meeting ground between your conscious and subconscious mind, between spirit and flesh, between logic and intuition. And when you begin to observe it, instead of rushing past it, something shifts. It begins to open up to you. Neurologically, this is when your brainwaves begin to change. As you relax, your brain shifts from the active beta state of wakefulness into alpha, associated with creativity, meditation, and inner calm. From there, you descend into theta waves, the deeply intuitive frequency where imagination, memory, and emotion merge. This is the realm of hypnosis, the seat of the subconscious, the territory of spiritual impressions. In this state, you're more open than ever. The inner critic goes silent, the ego loosens its grip, and the filters that normally separate you from your deeper self begin to dissolve. Energetically, your field softens. Your aura expands slightly. The chakras slow their spin, particularly the third eye and crown, which begin to glow with heightened sensitivity. This is why you often see imagery during this phase, why your inner screen lights up without effort. Your subtle body, the energetic mirror of your physical self, starts to disconnect gently from your outer form, like steam rising from water. You're not leaving your body fully, but you're not fully anchored either. You're in that mystical in-between where the most profound insights can come through. This state is delicate. If you try to hold on to it, it slips away. If you ignore it, you miss it. But if you allow it, if you simply rest in it, just for a moment, you'll begin to feel its texture. There's a softness to it, a hum. It's not quite silence, but not noise either. It's the sound of your consciousness adjusting its frequency. Think of it like tuning a radio. You're slipping out of the dense channel of physical reality and moving into something finer, more refined. And just like with a radio, the moment between stations often sounds like static, like nothingness. But it's not nothing, it's transition. And within that static, if you listen closely, there is language. Some people hear whispers in this state, words that don't come from their own mind. Others receive full images, like ancient symbols or places they've never been. Many report feeling a presence, a knowing that something or someone is there, not in a threatening way, but in a deeply familiar one. You may have experienced this too, the sensation that you're being watched, but lovingly, protected. That's because this threshold is not empty. It is filled with the intelligence of your higher self, your guides, your soul memory, all reaching for you in that brief window before sleep pulls you in fully. Why is it so hard to remember this state? Because we rarely bring awareness to it. Most people fall asleep while thinking about what they have to do tomorrow, scrolling through a glowing screen, or mentally replaying the events of the day, and so they miss the door. They walk through it half-conscious, never noticing what was written on the threshold. But when you begin to approach sleep deliberately, everything changes. You start to see sleep not as an end, but as a sacred corridor. And the hypnagogic state becomes your invitation, your permission slip to explore realms that are invisible by day. In this state, the ego doesn't vanish, it dims, it begins to lose control. You're still you, but a quieter version, a more open version. And in that openness, what has been trying to reach you all day finally gets through. Dreams are born here. Visions are seeded here. Messages are planted in the soil of your subconscious, so they can bloom later, sometimes in a dream, sometimes in a moment of synchronicity days later. What would happen if you stopped rushing through this space? If you allowed yourself to rest gently at the edge, just observing, what might you hear? What might you see? What truths might whisper themselves into your awareness? Truths that daylight is too loud to carry. This is not fantasy. This is not poetic metaphor. This is the reality your soul already knows. You've been passing through this gateway every night of your life, and now you're being invited to notice it, to remember, to return. Because once you become conscious at the edge of awareness, sleep no longer feels like falling into darkness. It feels like rising into light. What if the moment your body begins to fall asleep, something within you quietly begins to rise? You've probably never been told this, not in school, not by science, not even by most spiritual traditions in the way that you feel it deep in your bones. But every night, as your physical form rests, your consciousness does not simply remain locked inside. It expands, it moves, it explores. While your body lies still, something subtle, something ancient, slips free. You may not see it, and most nights you won't remember it, but your soul leaves. Not permanently, not violently. It's a gentle departure, a loosening, a sacred exhale of the spirit. This is the secret rhythm of your sleep. Beneath the surface of deep breathing and closed eyes, your energetic body, the subtle layer of self that exists beyond flesh, is in motion. Not in a physical sense, like walking or flying in space, but in an energetic sense, a shifting of vibrational bandwidths. Your soul doesn't travel like a passenger on a plane, it travels like a song changing frequencies. It moves not through space, but through dimension. As you sleep, your connection to the physical world begins to soften. Your 5 senses fade into the background. You're no longer listening to the sounds of the world or reacting to the pull of gravity. The anchors that normally bind you to the body, touch, sight, sound, time, are released, one by one. It starts slowly, a numbing of the limbs, a sense of weightlessness, a floating sensation just beneath the surface of your awareness. Most people chalk this up to relaxation, or the body preparing for deep rest, but it is so much more than that. In ancient teachings, this phenomenon is known as astral detachment. Your soul, sometimes referred to as the astral self or light body, does not sleep. It doesn't need to. It's eternal, infinite, untethered by the biological limits that define your physical existence. So while your body regenerates, your soul remembers. It leaves the shell for a time, traveling not away from you, but deeper into you, into the vast ocean of your true being. Every night is a return, a retrieval, a journey into what lies beyond your name, your job, your stories. You've felt it before, haven't you? That sudden jolt just as you're about to fall asleep, the feeling of falling, or being pulled out of your body. That is not random. That is the moment your consciousness begins to separate from the physical vessel. Sometimes you snap back in, sometimes you continue drifting out, unaware. But either way, the process is ancient, and it happens to you every night, whether you're conscious of it or not. If this sounds like a strange idea, consider the countless accounts of near-death experiences. People who have died, clinically, for minutes at a time, and returned, often speak of floating above their bodies, observing their surroundings from above, feeling a deep peace and detachment from pain. They describe tunnels of light, vibrant landscapes, unfamiliar beings, and a profound sense of reunion with something greater than themselves. These are not fantasies, they are glimpses. And what's most compelling is how often those descriptions mirror what happens in deep, meaningful dreams. The language might be different, the setting may vary, but the feeling, the expansion, the clarity, the freedom, is the same. What those who have touched the edge of death experience temporarily, you experience nightly. It's not as dramatic, not as clear, but it's there. Because your soul doesn't need to almost die to begin to remember, it just needs to sleep. In many ancient systems of wisdom, this nightly soul travel was not only accepted, it was cultivated. The Egyptians believed in the Ba and the Ka, the soul aspects of a person, that left the body during sleep and returned with insight. In the traditions of Tibetan dream yoga, practitioners train for years to remain conscious as the soul exits the body during sleep, using the dream state as a launching point for spiritual mastery. Indigenous shamans often describe journeying in their sleep, traveling to other realms to retrieve information, healing, or guidance for their communities. These weren't metaphors, they were maps. You don't have to be a mystic or monk to experience this. You already are. Every night, your consciousness explores realities that exist beyond the physical. The dreams you remember are only fragments, shadows cast by deeper experiences. Some of what you encounter is symbolic, some is literal. Some dreams are mirrors of your inner psyche, while others are messages, invitations, visitations. The ones that feel more real than waking life? The ones that stay with you for years, even though they made no logical sense. Those are not just dreams. Those are memories from the realm your soul visited. And it's not always a solo journey. There are moments, perhaps you've had them, when you feel as if you met someone in a dream. Not just a character in a story, but a presence. A being that seemed to know you. They didn't speak in words, but you understood them completely. They weren't from your past or your daily life. They existed somewhere else entirely. You woke up shaken, or uplifted, or changed. That was not fiction. That was contact. There are places your soul goes that your conscious mind can't follow, at least not yet. Realms where time does not function as it does here. Places where light has texture, and thoughts form landscapes. These spiritual realms are not just flights of imagination, they are levels of consciousness, dimensions that your waking mind is simply not tuned into. But when your body sleeps, the channel changes. The static clears. And what remains is signal, direct connection to a higher bandwidth of truth. You are not unconscious when you sleep. You are only unconscious here. You're conscious there. You're remembering there. You're healing there. Your soul is studying, integrating, traveling, receiving truths your waking mind would resist, ignore, or forget. And yet, the effects bleed through. You wake up with clarity you didn't have. You understand something you didn't read or hear. You feel peace with a situation that used to haunt you. Why? Because your soul already resolved it while your body slept. And sometimes, the reverse is true. You wake up unsettled, confused, afraid. You don't know why. Nothing happened in your life. But something did happen, in another layer of your being. You encountered something in the night, faced something unresolved. The soul works in layers, and not all journeys are light and love. Some are initiation, some are cleansing, some are descent into your own shadow so that you may rise clearer. When you begin to realize this, sleep is no longer just a biological necessity. It becomes a sacred ritual, a nightly rite of passage. Not just rest, but return. Not just recovery, but revelation. Each time your eyes close, the journey begins. And each morning you rise, a part of you returns holding wisdom that may not speak in words, but echoes in your intuition. So the next time you find yourself drifting into sleep, ask, "Where am I going?" And when you wake up, ask, "What part of me just came back?" Because the truth is, you are not simply sleeping, you are traveling, you are remembering, you are becoming. What if your dreams aren't just dreams at all? What if, every night, as your body rests in darkness, your consciousness slips into another world, one not made of neurons firing randomly, but of dimensions layered just beyond your sight? You've likely been told that dreams are nothing more than your brain sorting through the day's experiences, a chaotic film reel of memories, stress, and imagination. But deep down, you've always felt there's more to it, because there are dreams that don't fade, dreams that stay with you for years, dreams that shake you awake in sweat and tears, or lift you into a peace so profound you feel it hours, even days, after opening your eyes. How do you explain that? A flicker of misfiring synapses, or something else? For centuries, we've been conditioned to view dreams through a reductionist lens, a leftover echo of the body's rest cycle, a glitch in the brain's chemistry. But this view collapses under the weight of your lived experience. It cannot account for why you wake from certain dreams with clarity you've never had before. It cannot explain the feeling of meeting someone you've never seen, but somehow know. It cannot explain the architecture of dreamscapes more vivid than reality itself, or the emotional intensity of a moment that only existed in the silent world behind your eyelids. You already know the truth. Dreams are not nonsense, they are language, and like any sacred language, they speak in symbols, in feelings, in metaphors, and multidimensional experiences. They speak in ways your conscious mind has forgotten how to interpret, but the soul remembers. And that's why, even when you forget the storyline of a dream, you don't forget the feeling. Because the feeling isn't just a memory, it's a residue, a trace of where you've just been. In the teachings of mystics, sages, and initiates across cultures, dreams have always been more than psychological shadows. They were seen as portals, gateways, points of access into unseen realms. The Egyptians believed that dreams were a form of communication with the divine, not imagination, but visitation. In the Aboriginal traditions of Australia, the dream time wasn't just a myth, it was the true world, the eternal one. This physical life was the illusion. And in Tibetan dream yoga, dreams are the arena for mastering reality itself, learning to become conscious while the world dissolves around you, so that you may awaken not just in sleep, but in life. When you dream, you're not fabricating something from scratch, you're tuning into something that already exists. Like a radio dial sliding from one frequency to another, your consciousness shifts from the dense bandwidth of waking life into a more fluid, expansive realm. In this state, time bends, space warps. The ego unravels, and you step into realities that don't play by the same rules. Some dreams feel symbolic, yes, but others feel like memories, places you've been, people you've known, lessons you've agreed to learn again and again. And sometimes, you don't just visit these realms, you bring something back. Have you ever woken up with a sense of knowing? As if something important just happened, even though the details evaporated the moment your alarm went off. That's because the memory didn't land in your logical brain, it landed in your energetic body, in your subconscious. And like seeds planted in rich soil, those memories continue to grow in the background, shaping your insights, your reactions, your choices. You may think a dream is long forgotten, but then weeks later, a moment happens in waking life that mirrors the dream. A person shows up, a symbol repeats, and suddenly, you remember, not with your mind, but with your soul. Some dreams are teaching fields, others are healing chambers, some are arenas for release, where emotions long buried finally surface in metaphoric form so they can be processed and let go. A chase through a collapsing city, a childhood home covered in vines, an endless hallway of mirrors. These are not just stories, they are programs, not artificial, but intelligent. They are the subconscious using multidimensional imagery to help you confront, understand, and evolve. But some dreams go even further. They are not of this world, or even of you, as you know yourself. They are glimpses into other versions of you, other timelines, other incarnations. You might wake up with the memory of a life that isn't yours in this world, but feels deeply familiar. A different family, a different name, a different planet. It feels bizarre, and yet it's laced with emotional truth. That's not fantasy, that's resonance. You are a multidimensional being, and in the dream state, you touch the threads of your greater existence. You brush against lifetimes braided into the fabric of your soul. Some call them parallel lives, others, soul memories. Whatever name you give them, they are real in the only way that matters. They change you. This is why some dreams feel more real than anything you experience during the day, because, in a way, they are. In waking life, everything is filtered, through identity, through memory, through language. Your senses are bound to a body, your perception shaped by conditioning. But in a dream, those filters dissolve. You experience emotion in its purest form. You know things without having learned them. You see without eyes, speak without words, move without form. That level of reality is not lesser, it is simply different. And when you're in it, part of you recognizes the truth. You've been there before. This is why prophetic dreams exist. Why precognition, intuition, and visitations occur in sleep. Because you are outside of time. Your linear mind is offline, and your eternal self is online. And in that space, you're not limited by the laws that govern daytime reality. You can receive what hasn't happened yet. Connect with souls no longer in physical form. Access knowledge that bypasses intellect and lands straight into your energetic blueprint. And still, we call this random, we call this meaningless. We reduce this sacred experience to just a dream. But you know better, your body sleeps, your soul doesn't. The next time you wake up from a dream that feels like it mattered, don't dismiss it, sit with it, close your eyes. Ask yourself not what it meant, but where you just were. Feel into it, rather than thinking about it. Let the emotional residue speak, because dreams don't speak in straight lines, they speak in vibration, in pattern, in essence. And the more you begin to treat your dreams as real, the more real they become. The veil gets thinner, your recall gets sharper, the symbols get clearer. Your awareness begins to walk with you into the night, and eventually, you no longer fall asleep unconsciously. You begin to travel consciously. You're not just dreaming, you're remembering, you're visiting, you're healing, you're evolving. And the next time someone tells you dreams are just the brain taking out the trash, smile gently, because you know the truth. You're not sifting through garbage, you're walking among stars. What if the consciousness you call you is not trapped inside your brain at all? You've been taught to believe that your awareness lives behind your eyes, that it's generated by the neurons in your skull, that your thoughts, your feelings, your memories all arise from the gray matter of your physical brain. But if that were entirely true, how do you explain those moments that defy logic? The instant connection you feel to someone across the world, as if you can sense their pain without speaking. The way you know you're being watched before you even turn your head. The dreams that show you something before it happens. The sudden insight that comes from nowhere, carrying a clarity your intellect could never have produced. These are not accidents. These are cracks in the illusion. These are glimpses into something much bigger. The truth that your consciousness is not local. Non-local consciousness is not just a poetic phrase, it is a reality that mystics have whispered about for millennia, and now, even science is beginning to catch its scent. You are not confined to your body. You are not a passenger in a flesh and bone vehicle. You are awareness itself, energy, infinite and indivisible. Your physical form is a focal point, yes, a lens through which you experience this dimension, but you are not limited to it. You are the light that moves through the lens, not the lens itself. Consider the growing body of research that challenges the notion that consciousness is a product of the brain. There are people who've been declared clinically dead, no heartbeat, no brain activity, who return with vivid memories, detailed observations of their surroundings, and profound emotional shifts. There are documented cases of individuals who function with only a fraction of their brain tissue, yet live full, normal lives. There are quantum physicists now speaking openly about how observation appears to affect reality at the smallest level, how particles don't settle into a position until they are witnessed. What does that say about awareness? That it is not passive, it is participatory. And if observation shapes the world, then consciousness cannot simply be the result of a brain. It must be the very field in which reality itself unfolds. Your consciousness is not inside your head. Your head is inside your consciousness. The ancient mystics knew this long before quantum physics gave it new language. They taught that you are not separate from the universe. You are the universe, having a localized experience. Your awareness is like a drop of the cosmic ocean, temporarily shaped into a human identity so that it can explore, learn, and evolve. But that identity, no matter how convincing, is not the whole truth. It's a costume, a character in a larger play. Behind it stands the real you, timeless, formless, and connected to everything. When you sleep, you begin to disconnect from the illusion of localization. You no longer identify with the ticking clock, the daily obligations, or the roles you play. Your consciousness begins to float outward, unmoored from the boundaries of the body. And in this state, you start to remember what the waking mind has forgotten, that you are not bound to this time, this place, or this form. You are presence itself, awareness that can stretch, expand, and vibrate across dimensions. Vibrational resonance is the key here. Just as a radio can only pick up stations that match its frequency, your consciousness can only access certain realities when it is tuned to the appropriate energetic bandwidth. During waking life, your mind is often entangled in density, linear thought, stress, repetition. But sleep softens the noise. Your frequency shifts. You begin to align with subtler planes of existence. This is why you have visions in dreams, why you receive messages you didn't ask for, why you wake up changed without knowing why. You tuned into a deeper signal. But here's the part most people miss. You don't need to die to access this field. You don't even need to be asleep. You simply need to unplug from the matrix of waking life. That means stepping away from the noise, the distractions, the endless loop of doing and achieving. It means pausing long enough to remember that you are more than the roles you play. When you meditate, when you walk in silence, when you sit in stillness with your own breath, you begin to sense the edge of something vast. That is your non-local self, gently rising to the surface. And the matrix? That's the illusion you've been programmed into, the belief that reality is solid, that what you see is all there is, that you are a separate being, struggling for meaning in a world of competition and scarcity. That illusion keeps you tethered to fear, to limitation, to forgetting. But every time you step into sleep, or silence, or presence, you unplug. And in that unplugging, you remember. This is why certain moments in life feel transcendent. Looking at the stars, holding someone you love, standing before the ocean, those aren't just poetic memories. Those are moments when the illusion thins, and your deeper awareness breaks through. You feel something bigger not because it arrives, but because it was always there, hidden beneath the noise of your conditioned mind. You don't have to understand quantum physics to live this truth. You just have to be willing to feel it, to question the narrative that says your soul is confined to a body, to wonder why you sometimes feel the emotions of others so clearly, to notice how your thoughts ripple into reality, to honor the strange sense of déjà vu, or the sudden insight that comes from nowhere. These are not glitches. These are echoes of your infinite self, reaching through the fabric of the waking world. You exist beyond the body. You exist beyond time. You are awareness itself, dreaming for a while that you are small, separate, and solid. But the dream is softening, the illusion is cracking, and now, more than ever, you are being called to remember. So when you close your eyes at night, and your thoughts begin to blur, ask yourself, what if I'm not drifting away from consciousness, but deeper into it? What if sleep is not a pause in my awareness, but a shift into its purest form? And what if, in that space, I remember that I was never truly local to begin with? You've never been just a body. You've never been just a mind. You are the field of awareness in which the body appears, the quiet observer behind the thoughts, the silence between the words. You are the signal, not the receiver. And when you realize this, when you really feel it, then waking life begins to look different. The world becomes less rigid. You start noticing patterns, connections, synchronicities. You start listening to intuition more than logic. You start trusting the invisible more than the obvious. Because something inside you remembers, you are not local. You never were. You are everywhere. Always. What if the way we approach sleep today is nothing like how it was meant to be? What if the act of falling asleep was never supposed to be casual, rushed, or accidental, but rather sacred, an intentional crossing into the unseen realms that ancient civilizations not only respected, but prepared for with reverence? Long before sleep became something we tried to squeeze in between obligations, before we filled our nights with artificial lights and our beds with distractions, there were traditions that treated the sleep state as a gateway, a portal, a bridge between this world and the many that exist beyond it. These ancient teachings weren't built on speculation, they were built on observation, direct experience, and deep spiritual science. They understood something we've forgotten, that where your soul goes while you sleep holds just as much truth as what you experience while awake. The Egyptians knew this intimately. To them, the soul was not a singular entity, but a layered being. The Ka was your vital life force, your energetic twin, the part of you that animated the body and lived close to the earth. The Ba, on the other hand, was the soul's mobile aspect, its divine essence that could travel between realms. Every night, the Ba was believed to leave the body and roam freely, returning at dawn. This wasn't viewed as metaphor. It was a sacred reality, so deeply embedded in their culture that even their tombs and rituals were designed to guide the Ba through the afterlife, a realm they believed you entered not only in death, but in dreams. Sleep, for the Egyptians, wasn't a break from life. It was a rehearsal for eternity. In India, the ancient yogis mapped the layers of consciousness with stunning clarity. They described 4 primary states: waking, dreaming, deep sleep, and the transcendental, called turiya. This 4th state wasn't an unconscious void. It was pure awareness, the untouched light of consciousness that remains even when thought dissolves. It is accessible in deep meditation, yes, but also during the quietest moments of sleep, when the ego has been completely shed. To them, sleep wasn't a blackout. It was a sacred opportunity to merge with the divine, to rest not just the body, but the self. The advanced yogis didn't sleep like we do. They entered rest as an intentional ritual, a letting go of form, a dissolving into formlessness. This is where the yogic science of yoga nidra comes in. Far more than guided relaxation, it's a practice of conscious sleep, where the practitioner hovers in the liminal space between waking and dreaming, entering theta and delta states without losing awareness. Through this practice, the soul becomes lucid. The body sleeps, the mind quiets, but awareness remains, floating, free, and open. This is not fiction. This is the lived experience of those who know how to walk between worlds. In the high mountains of Tibet, the monks developed something equally profound: dream yoga. Considered one of the highest forms of spiritual practice, dream yoga isn't about interpreting dreams. It's about waking up within them. It's about training the consciousness to remain lucid, not just in sleep, but in all of life. The Tibetan masters believed that how you fall asleep is how you die, and how you navigate the dream world is how you'll navigate the afterlife. So their training was precise. Before bed, the practitioner would visualize themselves as pure light, recite mantras to elevate their vibration, set the intention to remain aware within the dream. If successful, they would use the dream space not for fantasy, but for realization, to dissolve fear, transcend illusion, and practice spiritual techniques impossible in the physical world. They knew that sleep was not a pause, but a path. One that, if navigated consciously, could lead to liberation. And it wasn't only in temples and monasteries where this wisdom lived. Indigenous shamans across cultures, Mayan, Quechua, Aboriginal, and beyond, have long worked with the dream world as a realm of communication, healing, and guidance. For them, dreams are not private or meaningless. They are messages from the ancestors, instructions from the spirit world, visions of what is to come. In some traditions, the dreams of the shaman are seen as community events, shared with the tribe and interpreted for collective insight. These dreamers often entered sleep not to escape the world, but to serve it. They carried medicine between realms, retrieved lost pieces of the soul, confronted spirits that influenced physical illness. And they did this through sleep, not as a passive event, but as an active, trained engagement with unseen forces. The common thread between all these traditions is startlingly clear. Sleep is not unconscious. It is not random. It is not wasted time. It is a threshold to be honored, a realm to be explored, a sacred act to be prepared for. And that preparation is where the true difference lies between modern sleep and ancient sleep. Today, we fall into bed exhausted, overstimulated, distracted. We drift into sleep surrounded by screens, sounds, and mental clutter. We treat the last hour of our day as a throwaway moment, scrolling, worrying, planning. But the ancients knew that the final moments before sleep are among the most powerful of your life. Because that's when your consciousness begins to shift planes, and how you enter that shift determines the quality of your experience on the other side. The initiates, whether monks, shamans, or sages, treated sleep like a ritual. They didn't just collapse into it, they purified before it. They aligned their energy, cleared their thoughts, offered prayers or mantras, and set intentions, not just to sleep, but to travel, to receive, to remember. Their beds were altars. Their breath was sacred, and their awareness remained gently focused, even as the body surrendered. What would your life be like if you treated sleep this way? If your bedroom became a sanctuary, your nightfall a sacred passage? If you ended each day not with distraction, but devotion, you may not remember your dreams, you may not feel yourself travel, but your soul does. And when you begin to meet it halfway, with reverence instead of resistance, something opens. You begin to recall. You begin to feel. You begin to witness the quiet wisdom moving through the hours you once thought were blank. You start to wake up in ways you never expected, not just in the morning, but inside of life itself. Sleep is not the end of your awareness, it's where your deeper awareness begins, and the ancients knew that. They walked those invisible roads long before we forgot them, but the path is still there, waiting. Every night, just beyond your breath, just behind your eyes, and now you're remembering it. What if the landscapes of your dreams are not random at all, but intricately designed blueprints, maps of multi-layered realities your soul navigates every single night? You may not remember every dream, most people don't, but that doesn't mean your consciousness isn't traveling through something profound while your body lies still. You're not just dreaming in your mind. You're journeying across layers of existence, shifting through dimensions built on vibration, resonance, and encoded meaning. There is an architecture to the dream world, one more complex and purposeful than we've been led to believe. And once you begin to understand the structure of that architecture, you stop asking, was that dream real? And begin to ask, which layer of reality was I just in? Most people think of dreams as a single realm, a vague mental space behind closed eyes. But in truth, the dream world is layered, much like reality itself. Think of it like frequencies on a radio dial. When you're asleep, your consciousness shifts from the physical frequency of waking life and begins moving up, or rather, in, toward more refined, subtle realms. The lower layers of the dream world are dense and fragmented, often filled with chaotic imagery, emotion processing, and unresolved inner debris. These are the dreams that feel confusing, random, or emotionally overwhelming. They serve a purpose, helping the subconscious purge and rearrange what can't be resolved during the day. But beyond these entry levels lies something extraordinary, higher dream planes that don't just reflect your psyche, they reflect the cosmos. As your vibration increases, either through spiritual practice or natural evolution, your access to these higher planes strengthens. In these realms, dreams become structured, harmonious, sometimes geometrically precise. You may find yourself walking through vast temples, infinite libraries, glowing cities suspended in space, or natural landscapes of unearthly beauty. These aren't inventions of the mind. They're realms your soul knows. Some are places you've visited between lives. Others are constructed fields of intelligence, built by collective consciousness for the purpose of learning, healing, or initiation. It is in these spaces that lucid dreaming becomes possible. The moment you realize you're dreaming, not as a thought, but as an embodied knowing, you shift into conscious participation. No longer just a witness, you become a navigator. In that instant, the dream world responds to you differently. Walls shift, beings notice you. You're no longer moving through an automated program. You're interfacing directly with the matrix of subtle reality. Some people use this awareness to fly or shape the environment. But for those on a spiritual path, lucid dreaming becomes a gateway to deeper work. You can ask questions, seek answers, reunite with guides, heal past traumas, receive teachings that bypass the intellect and land directly in your soul. And you are not always alone in these dreams. Shared dreams are real, rare, yes, but real. There are countless accounts of people waking up with identical memories of being in the same dream, seeing the same landscape, having the same experience. These aren't coincidences. They're evidence that consciousness, when tuned to the same frequency, can meet across dimensions. Sometimes, you may even encounter beings who are not from this lifetime at all, teachers, watchers, or soul family whose only task is to help you remember who you are. They don't always speak. Often, they communicate through symbols, glances, or energetic impressions. But you know them when you meet them, not because of how they look, but because of how they feel, familiar, ancient, true. Symbols are the primary language of the dream world. They are not meaningless decorations, but metaphysical codes, archetypes, compressed packets of truth that speak directly to the soul. A staircase doesn't just mean a building, it often signals a spiritual ascent. A locked door may represent a part of yourself you're not yet ready to access. Water can symbolize emotion, or the unconscious, depending on how it flows. The symbols in your dreams aren't generic. They are deeply personal, yet universally rooted. They carry echoes of myth, memory, and multidimensional knowledge. Your soul uses these symbols like tools, arranging them in ways that bypass logic and reach directly into your intuitive core. Understanding this symbolic language doesn't come from analyzing with your intellect. It comes from listening with your being. After a powerful dream, ask yourself not what it means, but what it feels like. Let the images sit in your field. Feel the resonance. Over time, you'll begin to notice patterns, recurring places, shapes, colors, and beings. These aren't accidents. They're part of your soul's vocabulary, recurring again and again because they hold keys to your evolution. Navigating these dream realms requires no map, at least, not a physical one. The compass is vibrational. Where you go, and what you access, depends entirely on your energetic state. Fear lowers your frequency, and pulls you into fragmented or distorted realms. Love and clarity raise your frequency, lifting you into higher planes. The more consciously you live during the day, through meditation, intention, spiritual practice, the more consciously you travel by night. Your soul doesn't get lost, it moves toward what you're ready to receive. Sometimes, your dream architecture reflects internal architecture. You may dream of a house you've never seen, with multiple floors, hidden rooms, or staircases that stretch endlessly. These are not just imaginary structures. They're metaphors for your multidimensional self. The attic may represent higher consciousness, the basement, your shadow, the locked room, a forgotten gift waiting to be reclaimed. And then there are the recurring dreamscapes, those surreal yet familiar places you keep returning to. They're not just dreams, they're territories, as real as any physical place. You may visit them nightly without conscious memory, but your soul knows them well. There are also thresholds, points in the dream where you sense a choice, turn left or right, enter the door or walk away. These are not symbolic alone, they are literal spiritual choices, portals, paths into deeper exploration. When you start to notice these turning points, your awareness sharpens. You begin to witness how your inner terrain shapes your journey. And then there are dreams so vivid, so real, they seem to carry weight far beyond the moment. They feel like initiations. You wake up changed, not because of what happened, but because of where you went. These are dreams that touch the higher realms, those built not from memory or imagination, but from truth. Sacred geometries, crystalline structures, colors that don't exist in the waking world, sounds that seem to come from everywhere and nowhere. You don't dream these, you remember them. You are a soul navigating a spectrum of frequency-based dimensions. Waking life is just one frequency. Sleep lets you access the others. Each night, you're passing through a subtle architecture designed not to trap you, but to show you who you really are. The more you honor your dreams, the more they open. The more attention you give them, the clearer they become. Eventually, the veil thins, and the wall between waking and dreaming softens. You begin to live like a lucid dreamer, not just at night, but in the daylight too. So the next time you close your eyes and step into sleep, remember this: you are not falling into chaos. You are stepping into a sacred design, a world constructed from the fabric of your soul and the intelligence of the universe itself. And you, dear traveler, are the one it was built for. What if the night isn't as empty as it seems? What if, when the world quiets down and your body surrenders to sleep, you are not alone? What if that darkness you enter isn't a void, but a vast and populated realm, a gathering place of energies, guides, and ancient intelligences that meet you not by accident, but by design? You've been told that sleep is a solitary thing, that you shut down and vanish into a private dream world. But the truth is far more intricate. Because when your conscious mind lets go, the rest of you steps forward. And in that space between worlds, you meet what your waking eyes cannot see. You've felt it before. That strange presence in a dream, not threatening, but undeniable. A figure that didn't seem like a random projection of your mind, someone or something that felt real. They may not have said anything, but the feeling they left behind lingered long after the dream ended. You couldn't explain it, you just knew. That meant something. You were right. Sleep is not isolation, it is invitation. When the filters of the physical mind dissolve, you become more available, more open, to the greater field of consciousness that surrounds you. In that field are countless beings, some familiar, some forgotten, and some that have always walked with you whether you knew it or not. Spirit guides, ancestors, teachers, watchers, and higher aspects of your own self. Not all dreams are solo creations. Many are meetings, counsels, interactions that take place in the subtle layers of reality, where truth is communicated not through words, but through vibration and recognition. Your guides often don't appear as radiant light beings. Sometimes they show up as ordinary people in strange places. A stranger who says exactly what you needed to hear. A familiar face that comforts you when you didn't even know you were in pain. An animal that follows you through a dream and seems to understand everything you feel. These aren't coincidences. They are codified encounters. Spirit communicates through the language of the subconscious, because that's where your defenses are down. When you're asleep, you're open, and when you're open, you're reachable. Ancestors come through as well, sometimes directly, sometimes through symbols. A deceased relative may visit, not always looking like themselves, but carrying an energy you recognize instantly. You might wake up in tears without knowing why, or feel inexplicably comforted, as if someone wrapped you in a memory you didn't know you missed. These moments aren't figments, they're visitations. Lineage reaching out through time to guide you. Sometimes they bring blessings, sometimes warnings, sometimes they just come to remind you that you are not alone on this path, even if your waking life has made you feel otherwise. And then there are the others, astral beings, entities not bound by time, space, or physical form. Some are guides from other realms, emissaries of love, wisdom, and support. Others are curious wanderers, drawn to your light. And yes, some are shadows, fragments of unresolved energy, echoes of fear or trauma, not necessarily evil, but certainly misaligned. You've likely encountered them in dreams that felt heavy, distorted, or terrifying. But even these experiences are not punishments. They are messages, mirrors, opportunities to reclaim power you didn't know you lost. This is where the concept of soul retrieval begins to make sense. During sleep, you often revisit memories or moments that feel ancient. You're pulled into scenarios that make no logical sense, yet leave a deep emotional mark. Sometimes, these are more than dreams, they are retrieval missions. Your soul returns to a moment in this life or another, seeking to reintegrate a part of itself that became fragmented, a part that disconnected through trauma, fear, or neglect. These dreams can be intense, chaotic, or surreal, but if you pay attention, you'll notice a shift after them, a lightness, a strange sense of being more yourself the next day, even if you can't explain why. And then there are the dreams that feel like lessons. You sit in a circle of beings, you stand before a figure teaching without words, you hear a sound or feel a transmission of knowing that has no language. These aren't imagination, these are nightly councils, real gatherings your soul attends. In those moments, you are both student and participant. You are not just observing, you are integrating. You wake up changed, not by thought, but by frequency. But how do you discern what's real? How do you know if a being in your dream was truly a guide, or just your subconscious acting out? The key is resonance. It's not about visual clarity or storyline coherence. It's about the feeling. Real encounters leave an energetic imprint that doesn't fade. You don't just remember them, you carry them. You feel a charge in your body, a knowing in your gut. You may feel as if you brought something back with you, an idea, a shift, a sense of presence that wasn't there before. And often, these dreams align with what's happening in your waking life. You receive support before a big decision, clarity before a change, reassurance when you're on the edge of giving up. This is guidance, delivered in the only language your sleeping consciousness can fully receive. On the other hand, when you encounter something unsettling, ask yourself, was that dream showing me fear, or was it helping me face it? Many times, the most disturbing dreams are not attacks. They are confrontations, your soul shining a light on what you've buried. Nightmares aren't always negative, they are catalytic. They reveal what must be acknowledged before it can be released. When something in a dream scares you, it's often asking to be seen, not judged, not avoided, seen. When you meet that fear directly, you begin to take back pieces of your power scattered across timelines and lifetimes. The most powerful encounters in the dream space often come not from external beings, but from higher aspects of your own self. There are times when the other in your dream is actually you, a future self, a higher self, a purer frequency of who you really are. These encounters can feel humbling, awe-inspiring, even overwhelming. You may meet a version of you that feels more divine, more knowing, more complete, not because they are better, but because they are whole. That self has always been with you, watching, guiding, waiting. And in the dream world, the walls between your current identity and that higher intelligence soften, allowing you to merge, if only for a moment. When you wake from those dreams, you often feel quiet, reverent, as if you've touched something sacred, and you have. The truth is, the night is alive. It is populated not with ghosts or fantasy, but with intelligence, love, memory. It is where your soul goes to gather its scattered pieces, to commune with those who have always walked beside you, to learn what your waking mind isn't yet ready to absorb. Not all of it will be beautiful. Some nights will be storms, others, revelations. But every single encounter is part of your return, your remembering of who you really are. So tonight, when you close your eyes, do it with intention, not with fear, not with distraction, but with sacred curiosity. Ask, gently, before you fall asleep, who will I meet tonight? What am I ready to remember? And trust, whatever comes, is exactly what your soul called in. What if your dreams are not chaotic at all, but are actually the most intelligent part of your being at work? What if, while your conscious mind rests, your subconscious takes the wheel and begins doing the kind of deep, intricate work that your waking self is too distracted, too tired, or too guarded to even attempt? Every night, while your physical body lies still, your inner world becomes a sacred workshop. Not a random theater of nonsensical images, but a place where wounds are stitched back together, karmic knots are slowly unraveled, and emotional residue is finally given a voice. You don't just sleep to rest your muscles, you sleep so your soul can repair what the day didn't have time to heal. You may not remember most of your dreams. That's okay. It doesn't mean nothing happened. Think of the subconscious like a quiet operating system, running complex programs in the background, always watching, always sensing, always recalibrating. And when you sleep, that system becomes center stage. It begins to process what the conscious mind ignored, denied, or couldn't hold. The pain you didn't speak aloud, the tension you smiled through, the memories you thought were long gone. Your subconscious stores it all, not to punish you, but to help you, to make sense of it in ways that don't require logic, only feeling, only pattern, only resonance. Dreams are the language of that processing, and while they may seem strange, your high school classroom morphing into a desert, an argument with someone who passed away years ago, a child version of yourself trapped in a burning house, they are far from meaningless. These are the codes your subconscious uses to speak to you, not in linear words, but in symbols that bypass intellect and hit directly at the heart of your emotional truth. Ever notice how some dreams leave you breathless? How others feel like emotional detoxes, where you cry in your sleep or wake up in tears with no obvious reason why? That's healing. That's movement. That's your inner self, doing what it knows how to do when the world finally goes quiet. Bring everything unresolved to the surface so it can shift, release, or integrate. Emotional integration is one of the primary functions of dreaming. Your conscious self can only hold so much before it cracks, but your subconscious doesn't crack. It alchemizes. It takes your day's worth of emotion, especially the unspoken kind, and weaves it into dream scenarios where those feelings can find release. You may dream of confrontation, but it's not about the person in the dream, it's about the part of you that never got to speak. You may dream of being abandoned, not because it's prophecy, but because your inner child still remembers the wound and is asking to be held. These dreams don't always feel good, but they serve you deeply. They show you what still lives inside you, waiting to be acknowledged. Sometimes, healing goes deeper, into the layers of trauma, and even into karma. In dreams, you may re-experience something painful, something you thought you were done with. And you may wonder, why is this coming up again? I've already dealt with this. But healing is not linear, it is cyclical. You revisit what you're ready to process more deeply, and in sleep, the edges are softer, the ego is quiet. And so the subconscious can pull from the archives, gently or abruptly, and reintroduce moments that still carry charge, moments that still affect your choices, even when you pretend they don't. You may not always be consciously aware of this karmic work, but you feel it. You wake up lighter, as if something heavy has lifted even if you can't name it. Or you wake up stirred, raw, like something important just happened. That's not random, that's your soul releasing what no longer belongs. The body sleeps, but the being does not. It moves. It confronts. It reclaims. That's why some mornings you feel like you lived another life overnight, because part of you did. Not all dreams are about pain. Some are celebrations, milestones, evidence that progress is being made on the inner planes. You might dream of flying, not to escape, but as a signal that something heavy has been shed. You might reunite with someone from the past, not to grieve, but to finally say goodbye. You might witness yourself doing something brave or impossible, because your subconscious is preparing you to do that very thing in waking life. It's not just reflection, it's rehearsal. The dream world isn't separate from reality. It is preparation for it. And sometimes, what seems like a meaningless dream, wandering a grocery store, floating through endless hallways, reliving a mundane conversation, is anything but meaningless. The subconscious doesn't waste time. Every image, every sensation, is serving a purpose. Those boring dreams are often doing subtle recalibrations, integrating energies that don't require big drama, just quiet realignment. Think of it as spiritual maintenance. Not every dream needs to be epic. Some are gentle tune-ups, and those matter too. The more you begin to trust your subconscious, the more you'll start to feel its intelligence. You'll notice patterns, recurring themes, certain emotions that always show up when you're on the brink of change. You'll start to recognize that dreams aren't trying to confuse you. They're trying to speak to you in the only language that still bypasses your doubt. Because when you're awake, you're filled with logic, questions, skepticism. But when you're asleep, you're open, and in that openness, your deepest truths come forward. That's why dream journaling can be so powerful, not because you need to analyze everything, but because recording your dreams creates a bridge. It tells your subconscious, I'm listening. And once it knows that, it begins to communicate more clearly. You start to remember more. The symbols sharpen. The emotions reveal themselves faster. It's like any relationship. When you give it attention, it deepens. And perhaps most importantly, you stop fearing your dreams. You stop dismissing them. You begin to see them for what they truly are: a nightly therapy session, a sacred ceremony, a glimpse into your unfiltered soul. The subconscious is not trying to torment you, it's trying to liberate you. And yes, some dreams are haunting. They dig up what you wanted to forget. But others leave you breathless with awe. They remind you that joy exists, that healing is possible, that you are not broken, just in process. Every random dream is part of a larger intelligence. You are not being thrown into a storm of symbols without meaning. You are being guided by the quiet genius within you, by the layers of self that see far beyond the surface. And when you wake up and you feel changed, trust that. Because transformation doesn't always happen through lightning bolts. Sometimes it happens in the soft quiet of night, when your soul finally gets the chance to speak. So tonight, when you surrender to sleep, don't do it blindly. Do it with trust. Trust that your subconscious knows what to do. Trust that even if you don't remember your dreams, something deep is shifting. Something is healing. Something is being understood, perhaps for the first time. Because the night is not a void, it is a sanctuary, and inside it, your inner self is working miracles you haven't yet begun to comprehend. What if the person you think you are, your name, your story, your personality, is only one thin layer of who you truly are? And sleep is the place where all the other layers begin to rise. Each night, as your body relaxes and your conscious mind surrenders, something remarkable happens. Time loosens its grip, identity softens, memory dissolves into something fluid and unfamiliar. And suddenly, you're not bound by hours or by name or by the story you tell yourself each day. You drift through a realm where you're no longer just you are more. And in that space beyond the ticking clock and the mirror's reflection, your soul remembers what waking life makes you forget. We tend to think of time as a straight line, a fixed progression from past to present to future. But in the world of dreams, time bends, it collapses. You might begin a dream as your current self, then suddenly you're a child again. Then you're someone else entirely, in another century, in another body. You're walking streets you've never seen before, yet somehow they feel familiar. You recognize people you've never met, and they recognize you. These aren't random fantasies. This is what it looks like when your consciousness detaches from the limitations of linear time. In sleep, you are no longer locked into one lifetime. You are free to touch the full spectrum of your soul's existence, past lives, future incarnations, parallel versions of yourself that exist simultaneously on other planes. Sometimes, you might even feel split in a dream, as if you are observing from two perspectives at once, as if part of you is acting while another part is watching. That's not a glitch. That's a glimpse into how multidimensional you truly are. Your soul is not a single thread, it is a vast weaving of experiences, identities, and expressions. And in sleep, when the ego takes a step back, those expressions bleed through. You are never just one person, you are a chorus of lifetimes, echoing through a single body. Dreams can carry you into memories that don't belong to this life. You may find yourself in ancient lands, wearing clothes you've never owned, speaking languages you've never studied. You may feel intense emotion in these dreams, love, fear, grief, that makes no sense in the context of your current life. And yet, it feels real. These are not fantasies. They are soul memories, fragments of other selves that still live within you. Sometimes these past or parallel lives are revealed so you can integrate wisdom you once carried. Other times, they surface to help you heal wounds that originated far before this lifetime began. The soul does not forget what the conscious mind cannot hold. But if this is true, why do you forget most of your dreams? The answer is not a flaw in your memory. It is a function of spiritual timing and protection. There are certain truths your soul is ready to encounter, and others it is still preparing for. Sometimes, you do receive something profound in your dreams, but your conscious mind isn't ready to carry it yet. So it's sealed away, encoded in your energy field, planted like a seed that will bloom later when you're able to understand. This forgetting is not loss, it is pacing. It is the soul knowing when to reveal and when to conceal. There is also psychic protection involved. Some dreams are so charged, so filled with karmic information or emotional intensity, that remembering them immediately might overwhelm your nervous system. Your higher self filters what you retain to ensure your waking mind can handle it. Other times, you forget not because the dream lacked importance, but because the work was done at a deeper level, beyond words, beyond symbols, beyond interpretation. These are dreams that change you, not through remembering, but through vibration. You wake up feeling different, but you can't explain why. That's because your soul did the work, and your mind doesn't need to understand it. It's also worth considering that many of your dreams are not meant for the intellect. They are experiences, not lessons, energy, not instruction, and the forgetting is not permanent. You may suddenly remember a dream weeks later, triggered by a smell, a song, a glance. The memory reactivates at the precise moment it is meant to. This is the intelligence of your deeper self, working on timelines far beyond what your waking mind can grasp. But there is something even deeper sleep offers, something most people overlook. Sleep is a rehearsal for ego death. Each night, when you enter deep sleep, your conscious identity dissolves. Your name, your job, your beliefs, your fears, all of it vanishes. You don't remember what you own, what you worry about, or who's waiting for your call tomorrow. The ego falls away, and in that space, you are reborn as pure awareness. You touch a level of consciousness that exists without form, without narrative, without the weight of a personal story. That's not unconsciousness, that's essence. That's your true self peeking through the silence. This is why waking up from certain dreams feels like coming back from the dead. You return to your identity like slipping back into an old jacket. It fits, but it no longer feels as necessary. You remember your name, your tasks, your roles, but something inside you has been reminded that none of it defines you. The version of you that sleeps each night is not the version that wakes. Something changes, some layer is softened, some grip is loosened, and even if the shift is subtle, it accumulates. Over time, these nightly ego deaths prepare you for something deeper, the ability to live without fear of change, without clinging to form, without mistaking identity for truth. This is also why people on deep spiritual paths begin to experience more vivid, symbolic, and multidimensional dreams. The more you confront ego during the day, through inner work, shadow integration, or meditation, the more conscious you become during the night. You begin to see sleep not as escape, but as access. Access to yourself before the mask. Access to wisdom untouched by conditioning. Access to the version of you that has died and been reborn 1,000 times, and is no longer afraid of either. Time, identity, and memory, they are only tools here in the waking world. But in sleep, the soul remembers its own language, and it is not bound by clocks, it is not bound by names, it is not bound by forgetting, it is free. So the next time you drift into sleep, know this: you are stepping beyond the cage of time, you are leaving behind the armor of personality, you are entering the temple of remembrance, where the past and future dissolve, and only the truth of who you are remains. And when you wake, no matter what you remember, know that something in you has been touched by that truth. You are not just dreaming, you are dissolving, and in that dissolution, you are becoming whole. What if the most profound truths you'll ever come to know aren't taught to you during the day, but revealed to you in the quiet dark of night? You've likely had the experience. You wake up with a knowing, clear, grounded, unquestionable, and yet you can't point to where it came from. You didn't read it in a book, no one told you. There was no conversation or conscious effort, but suddenly, you just know. A decision you've been struggling with becomes obvious. A fear that's haunted you feels strangely distant. A question you've carried for months now has an answer. And you didn't arrive at it through logic. It arrived in you. This is not imagination, it's not a lucky guess. What you've received is a download. Something transmitted to you from a level of awareness that lives beyond the reach of thought. These divine downloads don't come through effort, they come through surrender. And sleep is the perfect vessel for surrender because, in that state, the ego steps aside. the filters fall away. The defenses dissolve. And your higher self, the part of you that exists beyond identity, beyond doubt, beyond fear, finally has space to speak. You're not disconnected in sleep, you're more connected than ever, not to the external world, but to the deeper stream of wisdom that flows through you at all times, even when your conscious mind is too noisy to hear it. This is why altered states, whether deep sleep, hypnagogic states, or lucid dreaming, often become the doorway to revelation. You're not learning in the way school taught you to learn. You're remembering, tapping into what your soul already knows, has always known, but that your waking mind had forgotten or resisted. During the day, you interpret life through filters, through trauma, conditioning, social expectations. But in the dream space, those filters blur. Truth doesn't have to squeeze itself into words. It arrives whole, without explanation. You just feel it. And somehow, that's enough. Your higher self doesn't need permission to speak during sleep, it only needs you to be open. And open is exactly what you are in that state. You're not calculating outcomes. You're not debating. You're not overthinking. You're in the perfect posture to receive. That's why the answers come when you're not looking. That's why the clarity arrives after you've given up trying to figure it out. That's why you can struggle all day to solve a problem and then wake up with the solution as if it was whispered to you in the night. And in a way, it was. You see, consciousness doesn't stop at the surface. Your soul exists in layers, and your higher self is the layer that sits just beyond the edges of your personality. It sees the wider field. It holds the longer memory. It knows the path you've walked, the purpose you came here to fulfill, and the choices that align, or misalign, with that purpose. When you're asleep, the chatter of the lower mind quiets, and suddenly, that greater wisdom has room to rise. You may not remember the conversation, but you'll wake up different, grounded, resolved, at peace without reason. This is the difference between knowing from the soul and knowing from the intellect. One comes from effort, the other from alignment. One can be argued with, doubted, retracted. The other is immovable. It doesn't need to justify itself. It simply is. And you've felt it, the kind of knowing that lives in the body, not just the brain, the kind of insight that brings relief, not confusion. It feels less like an idea, and more like a remembering, like something ancient being returned to you. Often, these truths are not even about your personal life, they're universal. You may wake with a new understanding of death, or a sudden compassion for someone you used to resent. You may see a pattern clearly for the first time, how you've been betraying yourself in tiny ways, or how your fear has been masquerading as logic. You may feel as if a fog has lifted, and suddenly your next step becomes obvious. No one gave you the answer, but somehow, you have it. That's because sleep is not escape, it's integration. During the day, you gather experiences, but they don't become wisdom until they're metabolized, and that process happens most deeply at night. Your dreams aren't just processing emotion, they're making room for truth. Your soul isn't just wandering, it's receiving information from higher fields of intelligence. From guides, from your own higher self, and sometimes from the unified field of consciousness itself, a field that holds everything you could ever need to know. This is also why you may wake up with ideas, creative, spiritual, or practical, that feel divinely inspired. They aren't random. You didn't invent them, you received them. Artists, inventors, mystics, they've all spoken of the muse, the flash, the epiphany. But what if that's just their way of describing what you've also experienced? That sacred moment where the veil thins, and something not born of effort, but of grace, slips through? You don't need to be a mystic to receive downloads. You just need to be human, and willing, and open enough to trust what comes. And yes, there will be times when you feel something significant happened during sleep, but you can't remember it. You know you knew something. You know it was big. But it slips away the moment you open your eyes. That's okay. It didn't vanish. It integrated. Not all truth is meant to be recalled through words. Some truths alter your frequency directly. You don't remember the message, you become it. You don't have the insight written out. You live it. The transformation happens, whether your conscious mind gets the memo or not. This is where trust becomes essential. Trust that your soul knows what to receive. Trust that forgetting doesn't mean failure. And trust that what comes in the night even if it doesn't make sense immediately, is never wasted. Sometimes the download is a single sentence, a phrase you wake up repeating over and over, without knowing where it came from. Sometimes it's a visual, a symbol, a location, a strange object that feels meaningful. Other times, it's pure feeling, clarity so deep you can't put it into words, but you know it's shifted something in you. These moments matter. They are markers of spiritual movement, signs that the deeper parts of you are not only awake, they are active, working, receiving, guiding. And once you begin to honor that process, once you begin to treat sleep not just as a necessity, but as a sacred tool, you'll find that the downloads come more often, the insight sharpens, the guidance gets clearer, not because your dreams are changing, but because you are finally listening. So tonight, before you drift into sleep, ask your higher self, what am I ready to know? Ask the universe, what truth am I ready to receive? Don't try to control it, just open the channel. Trust that what is meant for you will find you. It always does. Because your soul is never asleep. Even when your eyes are closed, it is searching, receiving, remembering. And when it brings that wisdom back to you, not in the language of thought but in the clarity of knowing, you'll feel it, like a quiet voice whispering not to your ear but to your essence. This is true, and you'll wake up not just rested, but return. What if one of the most powerful gateways to your soul was being systematically hijacked, not by accident, but by design? In a world that celebrates productivity over presence, noise over stillness, and distraction over depth, sleep has become one of the first casualties. You've been conditioned to see it as optional, something you fit in between obligations rather than a sacred right your soul depends on. Nights are no longer reserved for stillness, integration, or quiet reconnection. They've been invaded by screens, alerts, artificial light, endless scrolling, and the hum of mental stimulation that never seems to stop. But this isn't just a health issue. This is a spiritual crisis. Because when your sleep is compromised, your access to the higher parts of yourself becomes blurred. And that is not a coincidence. The war on sleep is silent, but it is relentless. From childhood, you've been trained to override your natural rhythms. You were told to wake early for school regardless of how your body felt. Later, you were taught to equate late nights and little rest with dedication, success, and toughness. Even now, the culture around you glorifies hustle and busyness, while quietly mocking rest as laziness. But who benefits from a society too tired to think clearly, too distracted to go inward, and too overstimulated to dream deeply? Modern life is carefully designed to fragment your attention and your energy. Blue light from screens suppresses your melatonin and tricks your body into thinking it's still daytime. Endless content keeps your brain in a state of anticipation, never quite relaxing, always one step away from the next dopamine hit. The very devices meant to connect, you are actually disrupting your connection to yourself, to your inner world, and to the invisible realms that only open in deep stillness. Every hour you delay sleep for one more episode, one more scroll, one more message, you are not just trading time, you are trading access. You are closing a door that was meant to open. The average person today sleeps less than previous generations, not just in hours, but in quality. And this isn't just an issue of rest, this is about interruption. Your sleep is not simply shortened, it's broken, stirred, and shallow. Light pollution from cities seeps through your windows. Phone notifications buzz beside your bed. Your mind is trained to stay vigilant even in rest, waiting for input, anticipating alerts. This constant disruption pulls you out of the deeper stages of sleep, the very stages where soul work, memory integration, and healing take place. But what if that's exactly the point? What if keeping you half awake, half rested, and half present is part of the reason you feel disconnected from yourself? Because the truth is, your body may lie down, but your spirit needs space to roam. It needs those undisturbed hours of night to recalibrate, to travel, to receive. When sleep becomes shallow and erratic, your spiritual processes become foggy, the dreamscape becomes harder to enter, your recall becomes vague, the downloads become garbled, and over time, you begin to forget that sleep was ever sacred in the first place. The consequences go beyond fatigue. poor sleep hygiene subtly dims your intuition. It makes you reactive rather than reflective. It keeps your nervous system in a low-level state of alertness, making true surrender almost impossible. Without surrender, there is no access to the inner temple. And without that access, you begin to feel more like a machine than a soul. You go through motions, but something feels missing. You forget how to hear your inner voice. You forget how to feel stillness without restlessness. You forget how to connect to the divine, because the door has been slowly closing, night after night. This isn't just happening on a personal level, it's collective. Entire societies now function on caffeine and distraction, while sleep is treated like a luxury rather than a necessity. But this erosion of sleep is not simply a health epidemic, it's a spiritual amnesia. We are forgetting what the night is for. We are forgetting that darkness is not to be feared, but embraced. That the veil is thinner when the world is quiet. That sleep was always meant to be a return, not just to physical rest, but to soul remembrance. And yet, the sacred can still be reclaimed. It starts with intention. Reclaiming sleep means remembering that it is not just a break from life, it is life. It is a sacred journey your soul takes each night, a time for healing, guidance, transformation, and realignment. And the body, the mind, and the spirit must all be prepared for it. The ancients understood this. They didn't stumble into sleep the way modern people collapse into bed, exhausted and overstimulated. They prepared, they dimmed lights, they offered prayers. They reflected. They aligned their energies, because they knew that entering sleep was like entering a temple. And you do not barge into a temple with noise in your mind and chaos in your heart. You enter gently, with reverence, with presence. So what can you do now, in this noisy world, to reclaim the sanctity of sleep? Begin by creating space, not just physical space, but energetic space. Turn off the screens earlier. Let your nervous system decompress without stimulation. Let your eyes return to natural rhythms of light and darkness. Speak to your body. Tell it that sleep is coming. Let your breath slow. Let your thoughts soften. Then go to bed not as a chore, but as a return to yourself. You can set intention as you drift, not heavy expectation, but quiet openness. Ask a question if you have one. Invite guidance. Offer gratitude. Affirm to your inner being, I am open to what my soul needs to receive tonight. Then surrender, not with force, but with trust. You don't have to control the experience, you only have to welcome it. And in the morning, instead of rushing immediately into noise, give yourself a moment. Pause before grabbing your phone. Let the remnants of your dreams linger. Feel into your body. Ask what shifted. Ask what you brought back. Even if you remember nothing, know that something happened. Something always happens when you sleep with intention. You are not weak for needing rest. You are not lazy for valuing sleep. You are wise, because sleep is not absence, it is access. It is where the hidden parts of you speak, where the veils lift, and where the truth of your multidimensional self comes alive. The modern world may try to strip the night of its magic, but the soul remembers. And when you remember too, when you reclaim the night as sacred, you begin to tap into a power that no amount of noise can touch. You return to your rhythm. You return to your wisdom. You return to the temple within, and suddenly, you stop waking up empty. You wake up whole. What if falling asleep wasn't the end of your awareness, but the beginning of a deeper one? You've likely been taught that sleep and consciousness are opposites, that once you drift into sleep, your awareness shuts off like a light switch. But that idea is incomplete, because within you is a capacity to remain aware, even as your body surrenders, even as your mind softens, so that instead of blacking out into the void of unconscious rest, you enter the dream space as a conscious traveler, not a passive sleeper, but a participant in the mystery. There is an art to remaining conscious while you sleep. And it doesn't begin once you're already dreaming. It begins long before, in the hours and moments leading up to sleep. If you treat sleep as a sloppy afterthought to the day, your consciousness will follow that energy. It will scatter, fragment, and dissolve without direction. But if you treat sleep as a sacred threshold, something begins to shift. Awareness becomes more fluid. The veil becomes thinner. You start to notice what's been happening in your dreams all along, but that you were too asleep to witness. The first and most essential foundation is intention. Intention is the bridge between the waking self and the dream self. When you lie down each night, you're not simply waiting for sleep to arrive. You're entering an initiation, a crossing, a homecoming. And with this comes an invitation. Set a clear intention that you wish to remain aware. It can be simple, a silent affirmation in your mind. Tonight, I remember. Tonight, I witness. Tonight, I stay awake within the dream. These statements are not demands, they're energetic alignments. And your subconscious listens. With repetition, that message begins to embed itself. It becomes a quiet signal sent into the dream space. Over time, that signal strengthens, and awareness begins to follow it. Next comes the practice of watching yourself fall asleep, one of the most ancient and effective techniques for entering conscious sleep. The idea is not to force sleep, but to hover gently at the edge of it. To witness the transition without gripping it. As you lie in bed, close your eyes and focus on your breath. Not as a control mechanism, but as an anchor. Let the body relax fully. Let your limbs become heavy, but keep a subtle sliver of your awareness intact. Let your thoughts drift without following them. Notice the moment the images begin, those random flashes of color, light, or scenes. Don't chase them, just observe. This is the hypnagogic state, and it is the doorway. If you can remain aware here, without excitement or resistance, your consciousness will slowly slip into the dream world without breaking the thread. Of course, this won't happen every night. Your mind may wander. You may fall asleep too quickly. But the key is to practice without judgment. Think of it like training a muscle. The more often you return to this edge and stay just a little longer, the stronger your awareness becomes. Eventually, there comes a moment when sleep arrives, and you are still present. You'll find yourself suddenly inside a dream, but fully aware of it. And in that moment, everything changes. Lucid dreaming is one of the most powerful spiritual tools available, not because it gives you control, but because it gives you presence. You begin to explore your inner world with full participation. You can ask questions, seek guidance, visit places that vibrate with otherworldly resonance, meet aspects of your own soul that the waking mind cannot comprehend. And more importantly, you can feel what it's like to be consciousness itself, untethered from identity, moving freely across dimensions. To increase this ability, your waking life must become more conscious as well. Throughout your day, practice being present. Ask yourself, am I dreaming right now? Look at your hands. Notice the texture of objects. Question reality gently. This habit begins to carry over into your dreams. You'll notice something strange in the dream, and suddenly remember, wait. I've practiced this before. That's the moment the dream shifts. The moment you begin to awaken inside of it. Breathing techniques also help, especially in the moments before sleep. One powerful method is conscious rhythmic breathing. Inhale for 4 counts, hold for 4, exhale for 4, hold again for 4. Known as box breathing, this creates a calm, focused rhythm that soothes the nervous system and heightens awareness. As you continue this breath, visualize a soft light expanding in your third eye, the space between your brows. Imagine that light as a beacon for your awareness, something it can follow even as your body drifts into sleep. You're not holding on, you're allowing consciousness to move with grace. Another helpful practice is dream journaling. The moment you wake, write down whatever you remember, no matter how small, vague, or fragmented. This isn't about analysis, it's about anchoring your awareness. The act of recording your dreams signals to your subconscious that this realm matters to you, and when something matters, your system responds. You begin to remember more. Details sharpen. You start to notice the patterns, the places you visit, the recurring characters, the lessons whispered between the lines. Even if you don't remember at first, keep writing, keep showing up. Awareness doesn't blossom through force, it unfolds through attention. And this is where the transformation truly begins, when sleep is no longer just recovery, but ritual, a nightly return to the temple within. You begin to approach your bed not as a place to escape the day, but as a sacred site where your soul does its deepest work. You cleanse your energy before entering. You bless the space with intention. You surrender not to unconsciousness, but to expanded perception. And soon, sleep becomes your meditation, dreams become your teacher, night becomes your sanctuary. This shift in how you approach sleep is subtle, but profound. Over time, you may notice that you no longer feel like two separate versions of yourself, the waking self and the dreaming self. They begin to merge. The guidance you receive in dreams begins to inform your waking choices. The clarity that emerges in altered states begins to shape your day. You begin to feel supported, guided not by logic alone, but by an intelligence that lives inside you and speaks to you most clearly when you are quiet enough to hear it. This is the path of conscious sleep, not as a goal to be reached, but as a practice to be honored. It's not about achieving lucid dreams every night, or mastering some technique perfectly. It's about deepening your relationship with your own consciousness. It's about remembering that even in rest, you are never passive. You are never disconnected. You are always journeying, always receiving, always expanding. So tonight, before you close your eyes, pause. Place a hand on your heart, breathe with intention, and speak softly to your inner self. I am ready to remain aware. I am open to remembering. I am entering sacred space. Then let go, not with force, but with trust. Trust that your soul knows the way. Trust that awareness will follow intention. Trust that sleep is not the end of your day, but the beginning of something far more beautiful. You are not just someone who dreams. You are a dreamer who is waking up. And the more conscious you become, even in the stillness of night, the more you'll realize. Sleep was never unconsciousness. It was a gateway. And you've had the key all along. What if I told you that every time you close your eyes at night, you're not escaping into fantasy, you're returning to truth? You've been told your dreams are figments, stray thoughts stitched together by a tired brain, strange and beautiful maybe, but ultimately meaningless. You've been told that sleep is unconsciousness, that what happens in the dark isn't real, and that the waking world is all that matters. But deep down, haven't you always suspected that's not true? Haven't there been nights when you woke up breathless from a dream that felt more real than anything daylight could offer? Haven't you sensed that what happens when you sleep isn't something you're creating, it's something you're re-entering? That's because you were never just dreaming, you were remembering. Every night, when your physical eyes close and your mind begins to soften, something ancient within you begins to stir. Your awareness loosens its grip on the illusion of time. It slips between the cracks of this world and steps into another one where the soul is not bound by form or logic, one where you are not a name, a job, or a personality, but a luminous being in motion. Sleep is not an escape, it is a return, a homecoming, a nightly reunion with the eternal part of you that never forgets who you truly are. The dream realm isn't random, it is layered with meaning, it is saturated with memory. You're not inventing a new world when you dream, you're stepping back into a dimension you've always belonged to. A dimension you visit nightly, a dimension that continues to exist even when you wake up and forget. This is the space your soul calls home. It is the place you came from before this life, and the place you will return to when this body is no longer needed. But while you're here, sleep is your tether, your bridge, your portal back to the source. You've had glimpses of it. Moments where you knew a place you've never been, recognized a face you've never seen, understood something without being taught. You called it a dream, but it was more than that. It was memory. And not memory from this one life, but soul memory. The kind that lives in the roots of your being, the kind that carries echoes from lifetimes, from other realms, from frequencies beyond the physical. And this is why certain dreams feel so real, because they are. You're not imagining another world, you're returning to it. You're not dreaming of other versions of yourself. You're remembering who you've always been. The laws of time, gravity, logic, they don't bind you there, because they were never meant to. Your soul doesn't operate by human rules. And when the body sleeps, the soul steps out. It explores, it remembers, it reunites with parts of itself that the waking mind can barely comprehend. This return is sacred, and yet, it's so natural that most never even realize it's happening. They fall asleep assuming they're vanishing into unconsciousness, unaware that what's really occurring is a gentle dissolving of the illusion, a surrender of the false self, a reunion with the infinite. You don't fall asleep into nothingness, you rise into something more, and this changes everything. It means that what you thought was escapism is actually truth. It means that the night isn't a blackout, it's a lighthouse. It's the place where your essence gathers the fragments of your experience, receives guidance, integrates wisdom, and reconnects to the blueprint of who you are beyond flesh. This is why dreams can heal, why they can awaken you, why they can realign your entire life, because they don't come from the mind, they come from the memory of your soul. Your consciousness does not vanish when you sleep. It travels, it detaches from the temporary, and reattaches to the eternal. This is why, sometimes, you wake up feeling like you've been somewhere. As if you've just stepped off a plane from another land. Your body stayed still, but your essence moved. And that sense of movement, that deep inner knowing that you were somewhere else, it's not a metaphor, it's not your imagination, it's the truth peeking through the veil. Even when you don't remember your dreams, the journey still happens. Memory loss does not mean absence. Just because the conscious mind didn't carry the memory back through the door doesn't mean the soul didn't receive what it needed. Often, what you bring back isn't a visual or a story, it's a shift, a release, a newfound clarity. You can feel different, even when you can't explain why. That's because your consciousness went home, gathered something sacred, and brought it back into the waking world, not as data, but as energy. This is the great secret the world never told you. Sleep is not disconnection, it is reconnection. And the dream world is not illusion, it is revelation. And maybe that's why it's been so buried under science, skepticism, and forgetfulness. Because if you knew that every night you were returning to your source, to the deeper wisdom of your soul, to the realms that exist beyond illusion, then you'd no longer be so easily controlled. You wouldn't be so lost. You'd begin to live your waking life with the awareness of someone who's already seen beyond the veil. Because you have. The more conscious you become of this journey, the more powerful it gets. Sleep stops being a passive state. It becomes ceremony, a ritual of remembrance, a sacred conversation with your own divinity. You start to approach the night not with exhaustion, but with reverence. You stop asking, "What did I dream?" and start asking, "What did I remember?" You no longer feel separate from the dream self. Instead, you begin to feel whole, like your waking and dreaming selves are partners in the same sacred dance. And maybe that's what this life is really about. Not forgetting, but remembering. Not becoming, but returning. Because everything you're searching for out there, the clarity, the peace, the direction, it's already within you. It's been speaking to you every night, through symbols, through feelings, through visions. And now, you are remembering how to listen. So where does your consciousness go when you sleep? It goes home, to the place behind your name, to the truth behind your story, to the light behind your eyes. And each time it returns, it brings back just enough to keep you awakening, little by little, dream by dream, breath by breath. And one day, you'll realize you were never just dreaming, you were remembering what it feels like to be whole.